I had this EP I was making called Silky Santiago. And it was a 3-song EP that I made with Scott Storch and Timbaland in Miami.
Couldn't have been further from what this became, right?
And it was called Silky Santiago because it was like my drunk alter ego because I wore silk. You know, it's like so ridiculous, right? Like I'm in Miami getting hammered like Silky Santiago. So embarrassing.
You know, first impressions are funny things. You know, we create them and covet people's first impressions of us. We add them to our identity and then we move forward accordingly. And then ultimately, if we're not careful, we become the thing that we invented in the first place. But if it comes at the expense of who we are really, then you've got a couple of options, right? You either go back, you change your shape and you become something else altogether, or you go deeper than you've ever gone before and you reintroduce yourself and ultimately to us. Wow. And that happens on the record very rarely.
Yeah.
But when it does, we welcome artists with open arms into our lives like that. And if we're lucky, we welcome them into the studio to talk about it. Russ, you just fucking pulled off a miracle, bro.
What an introduction. Oh my God.
Bro.
You should make an album.
Not after listening to this one.
Oh,
I think anybody who listens to this one needs to go back and tend to their allotment a little bit, make sure their gardens grow in the right way.
Wow.
It's a nice place to start, actually, from where it grows. You know, this album, I can't remember the last time and I don't want to go specifically track by track, like I don't want to stick to an exact framework, but I want to give the album its place because you've given it a very defined timeline.
Yeah.
It's an album that is very much about growth, personal growth, but always with the idea of inspiring others to grow and to have some self-awareness and be unafraid to face things. I feel like that's a big part of who you are, that it's not just this singularity. You have to be able to help. You're a helper.
Yeah. I think by nature, you know, I kind of talk about it on Fraud where, you know, for a long time, starting in my childhood, I got my identity from helping and making sure everyone else was good.
Same, by the way.
Emotionally, yeah.
It spoke to me, that song.
Yeah. And then when you inevitably can't save everyone, it's a threat to who you are. And I crumbled when that happened.
You know, it's funny too. There's something about trying to fix everybody else that you think is this selfless exercise, but every now and then, you know, you have to have a little bit of self-awareness and ask yourself, am I doing it to help others or am I doing it because it actually helps me? Like, am I gaining some kind of positive affirmation for my own identity by putting myself in other people's problems and trying to be the solver?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I always felt so emotionally responsible for everyone, and I felt like it was on me to make sure my mom was good and my brother and my sister. And
was this a job you took on or a job you were given?
I think both, unconsciously. You know, I think when I was just super young, I guess, wow, we're jumping right into it. Fuck it. Transparently, just my house was, you know, I talk about it on I Love You Boy, where my mom was, you know, her nervous system wasn't really regulated and neither was my dad's. And so it was, you know, a lot of arguments and just high stress, high tension environment. And my mom sometimes would be very fatalistic and my dad was very reactive. And, you know, my brother and sister were sort of the still waters run deep sort of people. And so I was just running around knocking on everyone's door, making sure everyone was good after a big fight.
Because your security relied on it, man.
Yeah.
I mean, as a kid, right, it's pretty simple. It's like, am I going to survive this? And it's as dramatic as that. Like, if my parents separate, who's going to put food on my table? How am I going to be able to get through the day? Who's going to look after me? I don't have the tools. What am I going to do?
Well, you know what, too?
So you're trying to keep the family together because you're terrified.
It was, are they going to survive this?
Right.
It felt life or death. It truly felt life or death. I was worried about self-harm.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
And so, you know, it's such a heavy burden to deal with as a kid when you feel like those are the stakes.
Yeah.
That it's life or death.
Yeah.
If I don't knock on my mom's door and make sure she's good and make sure my brother's good or whatever, it's like, who knows? I felt like I was talking people off the ledge. It's a heavy thing to deal with. But like I said, it ends up becoming a part of my identity. And so when my parents separated when I was 24, 25, it's like I struggled with this idea of hold on, why am I tripping that my parents separate? I'm grown. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
But that's when I had to do the real like growing down in searching for like, okay, what does this actually mean? What am I bothered about by this?
Can I guess? It's because you're out of a job, in a way.
Oh yeah, yeah, kinda. Well, and if I don't have that job,
What's my job?
Am I?
What's my job?
Who am I?
Right.
And that's fraud.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I felt like a fraud. So it wasn't boo-hoo, my parents got divorced. It was, who am I?
Yeah, and not just who have I become. That's the other thing about this, which is fascinating, that when we go through these experiences as a kid, a chain of events is set into motion, which can go in lots of different directions. And it's not uncommon for it to become an artistic pursuit, some kind of destination as a way of expression and sharing your thoughts. It feeds the desire to help others, but it also gives you a sense of purpose and identity that isn't stuck in that job.
And it was noble, you know? It felt noble in a sense of like, I am the savior of my family, you know?
But your family become your fans then too. Because a lot of when you came out, right, don't get me wrong, you have a serious style and mood to you, which is very dialed in. People are excited by your music. But like I said at the very beginning of our conversation, there's always been a holistic side to what you do, always a sense of like, whatever steps I've taken, I'm going to help you to understand the benefits and the negatives of this.
Yeah.
So it's definitely built into the way you move, even as an artist.
Yeah. I think for me, I'm trying to share internally what's going on in the most authentic way possible, because I think that will help resonate with people and give them the light at the end of the tunnel. And it's like, I think in the past, I tried to make it seem like I had it all figured out. And that was sort of the coping mechanism.
Yeah.
You know, was like what we as men do, which is bury. It's all good. My therapist, mentor, just incredible person, told me something really interesting where he's like, you know, society dictates the value of a man based off of like how much you can carry, how far you can carry it, and how alone you can carry it. And it's so true. And that's what I was doing for the longest time. And I think now I'm at this place in my life where I have the humility to understand that I don't have it figured out. I'm trying to figure it out, and I'm trying my best. And I'm going to like let y'all know like what I'm doing to figure this out, and maybe it'll help.
You made your best music out of it.
Thank you. That means a lot, because I agree.
Even when, you know, you discover that vulnerability in a very real way and the courage to share it, it doesn't detract from the fact that when you came out, even with that sense of kind of, I got this, that there was an earnestness to your music that really resonated with your fans, but I think put you on a path of sort of confrontation to some degree with in particular hip hop and with the industry of making music of that level of excitement and energy of like, this guy's too earnest. It's like, what's going on? Like, I can't get my head around him. Like, what's happening? How was that experience knowing that you were achieving your goals, but at the same time, the community that inspired you in the first place, you were ahead of the curve on that? We're hearing a lot of big name artists now coming out and putting their hearts on the line. I felt like you were doing it ahead of time.
Thank you. That's awesome that you recognize that. I think for me, early on, I had entitlement, to be honest. I think I got to a place now where I realize it's not hip hop's job to reaffirm what I already believe. And earlier on...
Okay. We got one away early. That's a powerful observation. It's true.
But the issue early on was I was mad that hip hop was not telling me what I should have already believed about myself.
Yeah.
And that caused a lot of, you know, fuck y'all, look what I'm doing. Why are y'all bigging this guy? And it's like, you know, that's trickled throughout the album as well. This like need for external validation and all these, you know, just you're chasing yourself the whole time. I was chasing myself.
Well, because when you're a kid and you imagine what it's going to be like and you dream it up and you get lost in your imagination, that's an escape tool.
Yeah.
When there's trauma going on in your home or in your life, the imagination is a very effective way of avoiding that and disappearing into somewhere else. The good part of that is that if you do it enough, ultimately it becomes manifestation before you realize it, and you sort of set yourself on a pathway.
Right.
Then you get to the destination and you've imagined it what it's going to be like, and it doesn't turn out to be exactly like that.
Right.
Confusion.
Yeah. Complete confusion and like denial. And resistance.
And resentment.
Yeah,
like,
and resentment.
Fuck you for not understanding what I'm trying to achieve here. I'm dope.
Right. But really, you know what it comes from? It comes from when I was younger wanting approval from my dad, right? And that manifests into like a vicious inner critic because his standard was perfection. So I adopted his metric as my own. So now my metric for success is perfection. So now nothing I do is good enough. And so I ended up replacing my dad with the industry.
With hip hop.
Yeah. And so when I get into hip hop and I'm still not getting the approval, it's the same,
It'll drive you
what
crazy.
the fuck, you know? But once again, it was really this chasing my tail scenario where it's like, I'm really chasing myself. That's what the whole album is. It's like, it was you all along.
Ah, you beat me to it.
Yeah.
You beat me to it. I mean, this is for the cameras, Ron.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And this isn't really for me to look at. This is for all of you to look at.
Yeah.
Right?
It's true.
You're looking at this. You can't see your reflection. We haven't been able to build technology that allows you to see yourself, your own reflection through cameras of this caliber.
Yeah.
But it was you all along.
It truly was. Yeah.
You know, one of the really great things is going to your social media feeds and seeing the experiences you're having with your parents individually.
Mm-hmm.
Traveling with your mum.
Yeah.
A lot of amazing memories that you're sharing with us all, you're having with your mum.
Yeah.
Courtside with your dad.
Yeah. That was a big one.
You know, having these moments where you're able to kind of understand your parents on their terms.
Yeah.
On who they are,
mm-hmm.
the best jobs they could do,
yeah,
rather than from a place of disappointment or
right.
trauma
right.
or judgment. How did that healing process begin?
Through therapy, to be honest. And I think it's really easy for us to like blame our parents and like, y'all fucked me up and y'all made me this way.
Who else are you going to fucking blame?
Right.
If you don't have the tools to understand, it's not their fault.
It's not their fault.
It's a very easy place to go.
They were doing the best they could.
And by the way, there's a certain point in your life, but probably around the age of 16 to 20, when you should blame your parents. It's called forming your own identity. That's facts. As long as you come back around.
Yeah. So I think I got to this place where for the longest time, I was resisting who they were. I was trying to change them. And why are you not perfect?
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I realized that that's not real love, you know? Accepting them for who they are is real love. Not, I'm not going to love you unless you are this. That's not real, you know?
How emotional was it for your parents? And I'd imagine particularly your mum to hear this album for the first time.
Oh, she hasn't heard it. Neither has my dad.
Wow.
No. Yeah, nah. God, that's going to be a tough one.
Are you worried about the way you're going to feel or the way they're going to feel? Or both?
Them. Yeah. Yeah. Because I would imagine off rip, they're going to feel like super guilty and bad.
We failed.
Yeah, we fucked up. And because I know their temperament, you know, especially my mom's. So, yeah, I don't ever want them to feel like, oh, I'm pointing the finger. This is really just me.
It's a solution. It's a success story. It
is. But I would imagine it's tough for parents to sort of hear how they indirectly and they didn't want to, but there's effects, you know, that happen. And yeah, it's weird. Even when I like perform certain songs now, like I have a song called September 16th that is the, you know, anniversary date of my parents' wedding, and I perform it at the shows, and my mom comes to like every show, but she leaves, like she goes to the back when I perform that song because it's tough for her to hear.
Yeah, I bet.
You know, so yeah, and it's like, and that's okay if they're not ready to hear this, you know, truth of mine.
But like I said, I feel like this is a success story. This album being made and the way you're able to open up and tell your truth and get to this point of understanding, a better understanding. I don't see a better result than that.
Yeah, thank you.
You know, for anybody in the family or in the story.
It's tough though, because as you know, everyone's on a different place in their journey and on their race of personal development and truth. And if you're not ready to hear certain things about yourself or face certain things, and I think that was the toughest part about making this album is how confronting it was to have to come to terms with like who I am and what was really going on and be honest with myself, you know, on like the second verse of I Love You Boy, when I'm like calling out myself, like, you know, you were chasing validation. I
had it made, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, it's confronting. You know, and not everyone is ready to confront themselves. I'm not saying my parents aren't, but, you know.
One of the best things, though, is that, and great artists do this, is you took subject matter that is, in your words, confronting, and you built it in a very soothing and very open way. The music plays a very important supporting role in this album. And that's one of the things that blew me away. And I texted Scott and Larry after I heard it and was like, look, I didn't go into this level of detail, but one of the things that I just loved about it was that you found a beautiful contrast between the harshness of some of the observations and this beautiful, nurturing arrangement and sound design.
Yeah, that's awesome. That was the goal. I still am a massive fan of just beautiful sounding music, strings, flutes, beautiful chord progressions, and
space.
Yeah, and that was always the goal. And, kudos to Aaron Paris, who is this guy I brought in to the album. I basically made the whole album, gave it to him. I'm simplifying it, but gave it to him and said, like, go crazy, Twisted Fantasy this album. You know what I mean? Go add the strings, the choirs, the flutes, the transitions. And he just went nuts, Yeah,
he really understands where you're coming from, and he's fully invested in the subject.
Yeah. And shout out to all the producers too. This was such a new experience for me.
I don't recognize any of them.
Right. So they're all like, this is the craziest story, and I'll try to tell it, short version of it.
We have time, bro.
Oh, okay, beautiful. So my manager, lives right around the corner from me. His next door neighbor, they have a son who's a producer. And so for years, they were like slipping hard drives, to my manager's house. Like, my son makes beats, all these things. And Milan, my manager, would like tell me about it. And he would play me some of the beats. And I was like, yeah, it's cool. I can hear the potential. Yeah. It's not ready yet.
Yeah.
And then I'll never forget, we were on the way home from a video shoot, like 2021. And he's playing beats. I'm like, who the fuck is this? This is crazy. And he's like, these are the guys. So the neighbor's son has a collective, like producers from all over the world, like YouTube type beat producers, and playing me all these beats. I'm like, this is insane. Bring them all to the house, because I have the studio in the house. I'm like, bring them all to the house. Let's do like 3 days. I'm gonna call BB Borelli, who I just think is one of the greatest writers and just thinkers musically. I'm like, I'm gonna have her pull up. I'm gonna have all these producers, and we're just gonna do like a weekend and just make shit. There was no idea of making an album.
Sounds like heaven.
Right. So they all pull up, and these are like, 18 to 21-year-old producers who have just been making YouTube type beats. So this is like...
Can you imagine the level of corner eye going on in that moment? Youth unable to translate exactly what's going on in this time and how special this is tend to do this. What's up, man?
Yeah.
Up? Oh, yeah, BB Borelli. Oh, yeah, what's going on? All that front.
Yeah.
All that front.
They were awesome, though, man. It was such a good energy. And what's funny, too, I brought down my cousin, I still he was a baby when, baby Will, but 18, 19 when I had him come down with these producers, because he makes beats and he's insane. And so I had everyone in the house and we're just making stuff. And I was rereading The Alchemist at the time by Paulo Coelho. And I had this epiphany where we're all sitting in the studio and I was like, yo, here's what we're going to do. This is the name of the album. You guys aren't staying 3 days. I'm getting you a house. You're staying a month, and we're making the album.
Crazy.
And that was that.
And it happened that way.
That's how it happened. And so we just, from that day on, BB stayed a month. They all stayed a month. I think everyone went back for like 3 days to get like their shit together. They came back, stayed for a month, and we made the bulk, the skeleton of the album. We did the beats and like the hooks. No verses yet, because this is like a really interesting thing. The inception of the album got made in that summer of 2021. So the beats and the hooks and the concepts.
Yeah.
And then I stepped away from the album for like a year. And I didn't have anything to say. I didn't know what to talk about. It started off as this very surface level Alchemist parallel book of like, oh, I went through adversity, but if you believe in yourself, you can like get through it.
Yeah.
It's just fluff. It was vapid. It was bullshit.
Yeah, no real deep solutions.
No, there was no depth. And so going through life and experiences and getting into therapy, I remember like after the first or second session, I'm like, I have to scrap the album. It's bullshit. It's vapid. And then I sat with it. I was like, oh, nah, there's a lot here. I just have to scrap the verses, and now I know what I want to talk about. And so then I went in and I did all the verses. I was doing, I did therapy in my studio on Zoom right next to the mic. So I would do therapy and then turn to the mic.
That's the first time I've ever heard that before.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
That's literally the album is
That's
therapy.
crazy.
Like, straight up.
I got this thing about therapists right now, right? Because we talk about therapy a lot in this room, and I do therapy, and I love therapy. And the amount of times artists have gone to me, oh, actually, my therapist gave me that line. Oh, you know, and I'm like, therapists are the most underpaid creatives in the music business right now.
Oh my God, it's insane.
Who's going to be the first therapist that turns around and is like 3 points on the record?
Honestly, I told my therapist,
Someone's
like,
doing it.
this is all you.
100%. I mean, I live in this world as well, man. I mean, you know, I learn from my therapist, and then I come into conversation, and I have a bit deeper understanding about how the whole experience works, and it's kind of every single time. I mean, it's a. But then you ain't crying for therapists, man. It's a decent hourly rate.
Yeah. But yeah, that's how it came together. So then I was doing a session and jumping on the mic and going in, and that was that process.
Were there moments on the mic where you pulled up because it got too deep for you and you didn't even realize how deep you were going? You like had to pause and just be like, wow, I'm actually doing the work in real time with the mic being live? Because that stakes is high.
Yeah. Yeah, there was moments like that because, you know, he's so incredible. He would be like, look, for the exercise for this week, I want you to journal, write, you can do lyrics, whatever. I want you to write about your inner critic or whatever it is. And so I would just use the creative side of me to sort of, which I've always done, to make sense of everything else.
Yeah.
And I would do therapy exercises on the mic.
Yeah.
And that's what the album is.
Was there a song on the record on the album that was really hard for you?
I Love You Boy.
Yeah.
Was probably the hardest
one.
Why? Because it was the most confronting. It was me saying stuff that I just like, there's a lot of shame in my life. Shame's played a very big part in my life. I think it plays a big part in a lot of men's life, but it plays a big part, especially when you're a perfectionist. One of the results of that is a lot of shame. And so having to accept that I am flawed and that I maybe didn't do everything the right way and I didn't know as much as I thought I did is tough. And that's my arrogance. The arrogance is the omnipotence to think that what I know now I should have known then. And what a fucking loser and fuck up for not knowing.
Exactly. I mean, you've created a shame-based mechanism by acknowledging your shame.
Right. And the shame is how I used to win. I would shame myself into victory. Like,
funny, man, the fuel we use.
Yeah. And so we talk about it in therapy where it's like dark motivation or light motivation. You can win either way, but one is sustainable, one isn't. You can shame yourself into victory, you know, like, you're a fucking you fat fuck, you need to lose 30 pounds. And I lost 30 pounds, but I still didn't feel good about myself, you know? Because when you shame yourself into victory, you win and it feels like you lost. You know?
Yes.
It's brutal.
Yeah, it's a vacuous win.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it makes me wonder what your relationship is like with the ego now, because that is another powerful tool that motivates us into achieving things. We let our, you know, I think we often take the guard down on our ego because we know it's going to serve us well. We put ourselves in situations where we become offended or frustrated, or our ego kicks into gear. It's like, all right, I got that shit now. Let me drink that juice. I'm like fucking Popeye.
Yeah.
Like I'm done. I'm in.
Yeah.
You can't make an album like this without addressing that, without understanding that, you know, you have to have a new relationship with your ego to some degree and how you want to use it in order to achieve things, because it can't be that fucking, that devil on your back anymore.
No, man. Yeah, it's heavy, man. There's just this like, there's like an inner dictator, you know, who's just so, everything has to be done perfect and right, and it's very reactive when things aren't done his way, and that was the cause of a lot of my anger and frustration. I don't know if it was ego or whatever that is, but that inner dictator and that inner soldier who's just like, you know, a fucking nutcase. But what I've learned is that guy needs love. That guy needs compassion. And that's been the hardest thing, and I'm still working on that, is like, how do I give compassion to this fucking piece of shit? You know what I mean? But he needs it.
Yeah, that's going to be one of the big, that's just an ongoing process.
And you know what I've learned too, is that I used to ignore it. I used to resist that part of me, that shadow part of me, and it would get louder.
Yeah.
And now this is the confronting part, is like looking at what you're ashamed of about yourself and giving him empathy, you know? Because I never got it from anyone else. And I was looking for the world to give me empathy, and I was looking for the world to give me love and compassion. And that's, once again, it was you all along. It's me who I need to give myself empathy, and compassion. But I don't know how to do that quite yet, but I'm working on it.
So what role did money play in your life when you got some, if so much of what you were trying to achieve and build around your identity was to some degree manufactured? And when you manufacture well, you trade at a high level, and you receive goods and rewards from people, and you start to make money.
Yeah, money was confusing.
Yeah,
because it was a distraction from what I was really going after, but it was confusing, which is kind of what like Oasis is talking about.
I also was getting at that song. It's a fascinating little.
It's a fool's paradise.
Yeah,
it's like I'm getting money and plaques and whatever, so my life must be good. I must be great. I must be awesome. There's nothing wrong. What are you talking about? And so it was confusing because I couldn't tell if I was feeling fucked up, if I was allowed to feel fucked up.
Or if you're just biding time for the inevitable crash.
Yeah, it's like I didn't know what was...
That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Subconsciously, you kind of know it's not sustainable.
Right. And you're bracing for impact.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was confusing, and it allowed me to sort of mask everything that was going on internally, and that's what Oasis is like, yeah, things are fucked up, but at least they're platinum. You know what I mean?
So what's your relationship with stuff like now? Stuff.
It's just,
you know what I mean though? It's just stuff.
It's just like symbols of success. It's not actual success. It's just like the symbols of it. The car, the this. I think I was chasing plaques and all that because I thought, well, the next plaque, that's when I'll feel good about myself. Oh, no, double platinum didn't do it. Maybe 3 times platinum. At that point, I'll feel good about myself.
But I don't want this conversation to disrespect or be unable to reflect the success that you had and the impact that it had on an industry that ultimately you were a threat. Your success was a threat.
Yeah.
Because you had chosen a different psychology to the one that's baked into all of us when we want to pursue a career in the arts, which is like, you need us.
Yeah.
You need us at all times.
Right.
And if you have an issue with the way that you were nurtured or supported or something of that nature by a parent, you are like... That's for an industry that is built on the psychology of like, you need me to live. That's shooting fish in a barrel.
Yeah.
That's just like, that is low-hanging fruit. The arts is low-hanging fruit because a lot of people who are in the creative industries ultimately trying to prove something because there's a gap in their life and they need validation.
Yeah.
Guess who's going to give you validation? The people who put money in your pocket.
Well, that's not real validation though.
Right. It's not. It's business. And so, you achieved an enormous amount on your own terms.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so coming through the other side of that and recognizing maybe it's not the person that you want to be, what's your relationship like with your achievements at this point? Because I don't want you to ever, we can never discount what you did.
Yeah. And that's tough. That reconciliation with, all right, I don't love how I handled certain things, but I still got to like pat 23-year-old me on the back and be like, you did kill it. Considering you had no tools to figure out what was going on internally.
Yeah.
The fact that, I was still able to have the impact I did, make the music I did, and achieve what I achieved.
You went down the corridor and no one else was going down.
Yeah.
Very early on. Now it's like the model is like, well, it's distribution in line with the labels. And as an artist, you can pick and choose how you want to engage with the big business at a time when you want to engage with them.
Yeah.
But I never asked you this, how much of that was based out of rejection and how much of that was based out of an understanding that it wasn't the model that suited you? Necessity versus choice is my question.
Yeah. Wow, I never thought about it like that. Yeah, I think I didn't have a choice. I had to do it myself. And I think that's a big misconception is people think that, I have a song, obviously do it myself. They think that I was like preaching that as this is what you should do. It's like, nah, this is what I had to do. But I'm going to be proud that I'm able to do it myself.
Yeah, just because you forced me in the corner doesn't mean I'm not proud that I held my ground.
Right. But this isn't me saying like, be so fiercely insular, and ignore every don't receive help. That's not what I was saying. I was just like, if it comes down to it, do it yourself.
But isn't that kind of what you were saying in the end? Like I feel like the rhetoric got so ramped up over time because everyone who loves you was egging you on to make the stand.
Right.
And you were like, well, you know what? It's working.
Fuck it. Let me lean in.
Yeah. The last few years before this project started to come into focus for you and your life changed, I feel like you were. I mean, I would watch a lot of clips of you sitting back in podcasts going, fuck the system.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because like you said, I became like a slave to the perception of myself.
Sugar water.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, yeah, I did. I leaned in because I didn't know where else to lean. You know, I thought, well, this is a good identity. It's working. Like, this is a part of who I am. So fuck it.
So crazy how we build these things to try to create opportunity for ourselves, and ultimately they end up controlling us.
Yeah, I didn't know any better. You know?
Why would you?
Yeah. That realization is like the one that's so hard. Like I couldn't have said that sentence 2 years ago because of the omnipotence of like, I always knew better. I always knew everything.
I think that's the thing that people kind of used to get wrong about you. And if anyone was sort of rubbed the wrong way by Russ, it was like the guy kind of got this kind of like this very high level know-it-all vibe. Like I don't know it all. This guy's kind of like, and Gary gets it too. I know Gary's the homie and Gary's a friend of mine. Gary gets it too. I mean, Gary Vaynerchuk has a huge amount of support, but also people are just like, if you've got it so fucking sorted out, you know, that's not your solutions are not my problem.
Right. And it's so true because omnipotence is like the opposite of confidence. You know what I mean? It really is.
This is a good one, bro. We're having a good one today.
And so all of that like know-it-all energy was really from a place of insecurity, which is why that, you know, second verse on I Love You Boy, what I'm saying, supreme confidence, deep crippling insecurities. It's like, that's such a vicious mixture. You know, I had supreme confidence in myself, but I was deeply insecure internally with who I was and what I was supposed to do. And I was just in true man fashion. You just act like you got it all figured out. When in doubt, act like you know it, you know? And I'm trying to sort of get to a place of authenticity and a place of vulnerability in hopes that, you know, other men and people in general, but specifically men, can feel allowed to not know everything. And that's okay. You know, you don't have to know it all. No one does.
So how do you feel the way you conduct the more important relationships in your life is going to change? You know, I think that now you've created an open, you know, you're in an open field and there's a lot of space.
Yeah.
And you can choose how you want to fill that space because it sounds like you cleared a lot of shit out. You know, and we reserve space for the relationships in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder kind of how your attitude towards letting people in, because I'd imagine you probably had problems with that. I don't know you well enough to know, but I'd imagine trusting. Normally that story of like, I'm trying to fix everybody means that I don't really want anyone to get too close to me. I kind of want to help you.
Well, I didn't trust help and I still don't trust help.
Yeah.
You know, help was not wasn't a trustworthy thing. So I'm working on that. You know,
because you talk about the importance of one particular relationship quite a lot on this album. You know, it definitely shows up in within this very honest kind of discourse of this album. You know, you talk about like getting confused about what a relationship means to your identity and how it reflects upon your idea of yourself versus a genuine union.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm figuring it out. It's tough, man. I think all I'm trying to do is be open and be honest and be open to the idea that I'm probably wrong right now about this, about that. But like, I'm trying.
You don't have to have an answer for everything, bro.
But I'm trying to figure it out. Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah. That's where I'm at now. I'm just trying to figure it out, and I'm trying to do my best. And I'm open to the idea that I don't have it figured out.
You've done your best. This album is your best work.
Thank you.
No question about it.
Thank you.
I mean, I can imagine it feels like a fresh start in a strange way.
It does. It feels like this is my debut album. And in a sense, it is. This version of myself has never been heard.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, it's like you say goodbye to your old self on See You Soon. It's like
Kinda,
one more chance to remind you where I was coming from, like that confidence that's kind of that I built for myself, this environment I built for myself, and then like, okay, let me take you somewhere else, you know. Everything's going great. You get to I Love You Boy, and then I feel like Enough sits at song number 7 for a reason. I'm fascinated with numerology and the way that it relates to album track listings. I don't think any artist, whether they're conscious of it or not, cannot think about the order of things in the way that it feels.
Yeah.
You know?
That just felt right there. It was sort of the halfway point of the album, and it's sort of this excavation of just everything that's been going on, you know?
Yeah.
And the rapping on there is probably the best on the album.
I mean, you rap your ass off on this record.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to, right?
Yeah. That was one of those ones where, like, that was intentional. Like, I'm going to purposely try to push my pen to just, like, the nuttiest limit, but not fluff. Like, I want it to still be, when you really, like, read the lyrics for that, it's so potent.
Yeah.
And it's so, like, there's a lot of depth there, but
yeah, I mean, it's an immersive listening experience. I'm telling everybody who's listening to this conversation right now, you know, this new album that Russ has put together, Santiago, is a very you press play on it, and it's designed to draw you in. You should let it happen. It's designed to do that. Is the idea of penmanship, is that where the competition can live in a healthy space?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so, right?
I think so. I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to be the best. I think it comes down to, like, where it starts to get a little sketchy is why. You know, like, why do you want to? Oh, because then people will like me more. So that's when it's fucked up.
But can it still be about the next artist? Can you still race? Can you still get behind the car and race your race?
Yeah, I think, like, I don't.
Is there a little bit of you that's still just like, fuck, man,
that's kind of, you know, it's interesting.
I'm a mic
like
smoker.
Yeah, like that's what, like, I'm still trying to figure out that balance of, like, I like to compete.
Yeah.
You know, I do, but I don't want it to get into a comparison space, you know, where I start judging myself and start feeling less than because I'm not, you know what I mean?
And that did happen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's so, especially in this game, in this genre, it's so, you know, it's so competitive. And yeah, it's easy to fall into that battle, me versus this person. And
did you ever feel comfortable in those rooms? Did you ever find yourself in those rooms where you could say, okay, I'm in the room now with my peers and I've earned my way in here? Was imposter syndrome a thing for you?
When I was in those rooms, I probably did feel a little imposter syndrome, but tequila would solve that quick, you know, straight up, you know, knock the edge off and fucking, you know, get drunk enough to the point where you forget that you don't fuck with yourself like that. You know what I mean?
What about now, though? I mean, have you been able to maintain a healthy relationship with a lifestyle you enjoy, or are you in an abstain environment now in order to maintain clarity?
I have a healthy relationship with it where, you know, I was drinking a lot, and it was just because when I first started making music, that's what it was. The studio was a party. You're smoking weed, you're drinking. And so I would drink when I was in the studio. It just felt normal. It felt regular. But, you know, then I was drinking before interviews, and that's how a lot of those interviews went left. Was like I was, you know, pretty hammered in some of them.
That's where the industry side comes in, right?
Yeah, because it's all of it's coming out. But I never had like a problem without, like I wasn't waking up and like, I need a drink.
Yeah.
You know, I would just drink in certain situations, but that in and of itself was an issue.
Yeah, we're feeding the beast.
Right. And it was easier to just do that than actually like be authentic and be like, you know what? I am nervous. I am feeling insecure. I am all these things. And now it's like, yeah, I'm not rigid to the point where it's like, I will not drink. It's like, I'll have a drink whenever I want to have a drink. It's just now I don't want to have a drink when I wanted to have a drink back then. You know what I mean?
I need it. Yes. It's not
like even before this interview, it's like I could have like came in here like
a
couple shots deep.
Yep.
And it's like I was nervous walking in here. I haven't done this like stuff in a minute. But it's like I'd rather just sit here and be nervous.
Just sit in it.
Yeah, just sit in it. Fuck it.
Fuck it.
Yeah. Instead of trying to come off like I'm more comfortable with myself than I am. And that was the masking. That's what was like, it was operation. I have to look like I have it all together. I have it figured out. I know it all. And if I drink and get rid of the nerves, you won't be able to tell that I actually don't have it figured out.
It's not sustainable.
No, it's brutal. Because when I wanted to like physically get in shape, and my brother's my nutritionist and personal trainer and chef.
I was going to ask about your siblings. I'm glad you brought it up.
Oh yeah, and so he's telling me like, look, you want to lose weight, get in a calorie deficit. It's that simple.
Yeah, and by the way, the first thing they tell you to
drink.
do, you can't drink.
You
And
can't,
it's brutal.
Yeah.
It's such a brutal thing. I mean, as someone who likes a drink, I mean, I'm a New Zealander. I like a drink. And it's like, oh man, it's starting to show up a little bit, man. It's getting a bit Shakira over here, the hips don't lie, you know what I mean? And so I'm just like trying to figure out like, what can I do? And I go and talk to my boxing trainer about it. And I'm like, don't say it. Don't you say it.
Right.
And he's like, how much you drink? And I'm like, yeah. It's the first thing they talk about.
There's no way around it.
There's no way around it. It's all that unnecessary sugar.
It is, yeah. So like, I was drinking white wine a lot and
That'll do it.
yeah, it's so much sugar. And so I cut out the drinking for that reason to get healthy. But then after I like got to my like desired weight and like I looked how I wanted to look, it's like I'll have a drink now and then.
Yeah,
it's
let
not
me
a big deal.
I find a balance.
When I was in the studio with Dr. Dre and Snoop, I'm drinking gin. Like I'm not going to sit there and be like, no, I can't have a drink.
I don't know. Did you smoke weed?
No, surprisingly, I did not. Because I've smoked with Snoop before.
It's not surprising. It's not surprising.
I'm not doing that again.
If you'd said I smoked weed with Dr. Dre in the studio, I'd have been like, the fuck are you doing?
It's a death wish.
Yeah, but also he is there to work.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, if you're
so
not
dialed in.
serious,
Yeah.
if you're Snoop and you can smoke weed and be serious,
Rock
cool.
out. Yeah. Well, that's the thing, like, I give my younger self credit for is, like, I drank so much that, like, I can drink and be completely functional. It's not like I've never been the, all over the place. So,
can we talk about that experience? Can we, with it from the perspective of who you are today, looking back on that moment, not the person who's like, yeah, of course, maybe back in the day, if I'd asked you about that, it would have been like you'd have been in your bag still, like, of course I'm in with Dre and Snoop. It was no problem. I walked in, I handled it, But looking back on it now, it's a fucking mind-blowing thing.
It's insane. And I was so nervous. And it was really interesting because we walk in, I don't really know what to expect. Snoop's on the mic, Dre's recording him.
Straight away.
I'm like, this is insane. Like Dre's coaching him. Like that's what we walk into. And I'm just sitting on the couch at the back. And I'm just like, cool, we're about to just like observe a session.
Yeah.
Sick. This is insane. And then they start playing like songs with like open hooks and whatever. And Dre's like, yo, we need, we need bridges, hooks. And Snoop like vouches for me, like speaks up. Cause Dre didn't know who I was at that time. And Snoop speaks up and was like, yo, you got to fuck with him. Like he's a crazy writer. And Dre's like, oh yeah, for real. And so boom, I saw the power of a cosign in real time. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, okay, this is what they mean with a cosign.
Yeah, and then you know what happens at that moment in time?
Yeah.
Snoop lit a match.
Right.
And you've got between the moment that he lit a match to the moment it goes out to deliver.
So that's exactly what happened because then it was like it took a second and I was like, oh, fuck. Like I have to.
You can't bask in this one.
Yeah.
The match is lit.
I have to step up.
Yeah.
And the mic's out in the open. There's not a vocal booth. Like there is, but they have the mic out in the room with like 12 other people. I'm just
pressure.
Like, fuck. And so I'm like analyzing how nervous I felt on the couch. The strangest thing happened though. When I got on the mic, I was so comfortable. And I was talking with my boys about it. And my best friend Boogus, he was like, it makes sense. You've never sat on the couch in a Dr. Dre session, but you've been on the mic a million times. So of course you felt more comfortable on the mic than on the couch.
It's got to be that gear, right? That athletes find too. When
yeah,
you get out there and you're in your rookie season, and it's like 2 seconds, and somehow the ball gets in your hands, and it should have gone in your more experienced partner's hands. You took the shot, and this is where you could end up sitting on the bench for the next 6 months.
Right,
it goes in.
Yeah,
you find that gear.
It's like I just watched Steph Curry's
Hot Ones.
No, his Apple documentary, the Underrated.
Yeah.
And I think his second game, it was against Michigan.
Yeah.
I think the first one was like Michigan State. Second one was Michigan. First game, he shit the bed. Had like 13 turnovers. Crazy. Second game, they still give him the start. And he drops like 32 or something. But it was at that moment where it's like,
where's the gear?
Who you about to be? Yeah, where's the gear? Are you going to get in it?
Yeah.
Get in your zone or not? And that's how it kind of felt in that moment where it was like, well, this is it. Even though like objectively, I'm sure Dre and Snoop are not like putting that much pressure on me, but knowing maybe,
I think Dre exists.
but not as much as I put on myself.
That's fair. But,
Yeah.
Dr. Dre, knowing him as much as I do, which is enough to be able to say this, I think, he exists in an environment where he knows where the precious jewels come from, man. It's pressure.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's pressure.
And I'm sure he knows objectively in that moment, like, this is a high pressure moment for this guy. Like, I feel fine, but he's probably fucked.
He's got that Paul McCartney thing about him, when he walks in the room, he is aware that, you're on your heels immediately because of who he is. And I think it's uncomfortable for people at that level. I'm sure you felt this a little bit too, as you discover success on your level, that when you walk in a room and this brings us to the conversation about your relationship with your fans, which is deeper than a lot of artists. You have a very personal, when you give so much of yourself and you also share and you try to make other people's lives better through your own experiences, it creates a bond. And I'd imagine there's times when you have had to sort of like really kind of, to my point about Dre and McCartney and Dave Grohl and Beyonce's of this world, people talk about Beyonce like this all the time. When they meet her as a fan, she puts them at ease very quickly. And I don't think it's a gift necessarily as much as it is self-preservation. Because it's like, how much am I going to be able to really put up with somebody freaking out every time I meet them?
Yeah.
I got to find a way to put people at ease so I'm at ease.
Wow.
That's what I think.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I think maybe, I think I talk with my fans on such a personal level. Like I have a Discord server where I'm going in there and talking with them like one-on-one, talking to the whole group, chatting in the lounge with them, whatever. And I think I do it to humanize myself and to connect on a deeper level because I just want to be understood. I have this like deep desperation to connect and to feel understood.
It's also probably a really, really great response to being misunderstood by the people you were trying to get to in the first place.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, if some of you are just not understanding who I am and where I'm coming from, let me go and strike a bond with the people who are going to keep me in business.
Right. And you know why that was never enough? Is because that whole perfection thing and the whole, well, I'm not shit unless everyone loves me.
It's never going to happen, right?
That was the other thing I talk about on Fraud, where it's like, surface level, it's like, why did the hate bother you? Big deal, you had haters. It's like, nah, it wasn't really that. It was this idea that I got my identity from perfection, from everyone loving me. And when I found out that, wait, you mean I'm not God? You mean like people cannot like me? That's insane. And it threatened once again my identity, because who am I if I'm not perfect? Who am I if some people don't like me for who I am? It's a hard thing to wrestle with when you grew up thinking that who you are is based on if people like you or not.
What's interesting to me about this album as well is that you're doing so much self-work and so much of the important and necessary foundation work in order to create a very positive rest of your life.
Yeah.
But yet you've still found someone else's identity to put it through Santiago, the idea of this book and everything else, that to some degree you still had to put it through someone else's filter just at this point in your life.
I tell like my friends and my manager, it's like the album could have just been called Russ.
Right.
It's the same thing.
It's like a last minute pull up.
Yeah, but it's like, but Paulo Coelho says something in the foreword of his book, the beginning or whatever, where he's like, Santiago is my story, but it's your story. Because one man's journey is everyone's journey. So that like really resonated with me. And I think it was a way to make it, I guess, just more artistic and less fourth wall. You know what I mean?
I do. I think that's really smart, actually.
Yeah, because if I just call it Russ, it's a little too on the nose.
It's like, man, should I even be listening to this?
Yeah, like this feels, you probably should have just kept this in the drafts.
Right now.
Did your journal leak?
And also the artwork is incredible, and I can imagine that it's really informing the way that you present this music over time, and even just the palette, the color palette's incredible.
Teffy is the artist, and he's insane. He, like, when I told him the idea for it, it was just a rough idea. I didn't even have any of the songs. I just told him like what it was based off of. And the way he interprets things is so powerful and magical. Like, I wasn't thinking it was going to be that dark of a cover, Because when I first presented him the idea, actually, it was I had this EP I was making called Silky Santiago. And it was a 3-song EP that I made with Scott Storch and Timbaland in Miami.
Couldn't have been further from what this became, right?
And it was called Silky Santiago because it was like my drunk alter ego, because I wore silk. It's like so ridiculous, right? Like I'm in Miami getting hammered like Silky. So embarrassing.
Yeah, that's too much.
And so I tell him like, yo, I'm making this EP with Storts and Timbaland, and this is what it's called. But it's like, the title is based off of The Alchemist. And he's like, cool, I got you. And he sends me that based off of fluff, right? So that just goes to show where his head was at. And I'm so thankful that he was in a place where he could fucking deliver that level of an artwork with, I didn't give him much to go on.
Maybe subconsciously he realized that actually Silky Santiago wasn't the move.
Right. And then that back cover came after the music, where it was like me and my shadow and my inner child morphed together, sort of. And that was, it's just so powerful. He's incredible. And I love that his art, when you go look at his stuff, there's a dark undertone. And I wanted that for this album. This is not supposed to be the original version of it, which was vapid and click your heels and you can do it and manifest. And it's not that.
No, it's not. And by the way, it's entirely frameable. If I saw that on a wall, like, 12 by 9, I'd be like, all right, how much?
Yeah.
It's a pretty amazing piece of art.
Yeah, he's incredible.
Where does the wind take us as listeners? Where do you want it to take us? Where do you want it to leave us at the end of this experience?
I want it to leave you with the idea that you are what you've been chasing. And you're capable of evolving to a, better, for lack of a better word, but better version of yourself. Because the wind is sort of that scene in The Alchemist where Alchemist and Santiago get captured and they're going to get killed. And the Alchemist is like, Santiago's going to turn himself into the wind. And if he does, you got to let us go. And Santiago's like, what the fuck are you, how am I going to do that? And he does it. They let him go, whatever. And I took that as like, okay, this is just him evolving into a version of himself that's pure and that's maybe he didn't realize was achievable. And that's kind of how I took it. And so, but when you hear the hook on the wind, it's me saying, watch this.
Yeah.
Which was intentional because I haven't become the better version of myself yet. But watch, I will.
Well, you are.
I am.
Becoming it.
Right.
It's the process.
Right. And that's why like I ended with it was you all along, because I want that's part of the manifestation where it's like, oh, he must have done it. He must have turned himself into the wind because this feels triumphant and feels climatic. It was you all along. You did it.
There's no destination to this. And by this, I mean life. There's no destination. It's like they're all just resting points.
And that's what I love about this album. It's so open-ended for the next one.
How do you feel about yourself really now?
Oh, God.
Away from the music.
Yeah.
And because the music is a beautiful way for you to do the work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it is still born out of the fantasy of being a kid searching for escape.
Yeah.
And as truthful as you can be on an album,
mm-hmm.
it's still artwork, track listings,
right,
interviews, videos,
right,
live shows. It's a different version of the manifest.
Yeah, yeah.
So away from the art, how has this process affected / benefited you?
I think it's woken me up to what's been going on internally. And at least I now am aware of what's been going on. And I have tools and resources and help to try to figure out and how to manage what's going on. It's like, it gave me a lighthouse, And at this point, even though it is art and there is like a, distance from myself a little bit, but I think my goal is to merge what's going on internally with the music seamlessly so that they just go hand in hand. It's like the creative side of me was always the part of me that would come downstairs and make sense of everything that was going on in my personal life. So even though it is art, but, whatever the quote is, life imitates art, etc. But yeah, I think, how I feel about myself now is that I'm optimistic for the future and I feel hopeful about the future for the first time in a while because I feel like I'm actually going somewhere and I'm going somewhere that doesn't have anything to do with achievements, plaques. It's like, no, I'm going towards this personal, like self-mastery, self-love, self-truth, self-acceptance. I'm going towards that. And I'm going to share my process along the way in the best way I know how, which is through my art, in hopes that it resonates and helps other people. But my journey now has become more about self-development than it is about, getting a plaque and doing this and doing that. I want those things, but it's for a different reason now, you know?